Repeat after me. Oath of allegiance. I. Muhammed Munir. Do solemnly affirm. That I will be faithful. And bear true allegiance to the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And that I will preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So help me God. Oath of a member of the House of Representatives. I, Muhammed Munir, do solemnly affirm that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That as a member of the House of Representatives, I will perform my functions honestly, to the best of my ability, faithfully in accordance with the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and the law, and the rules of the House, and always in the interest of the sovereignty, integrity, solidarity, well-being, and prosperity of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That I will strive to preserve the fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy contained in the Constitution
to welcome you back. This is because, as you all know, we're entering the third gear, the last lap before we go into the crucial end of the 4 years. And this is just to encourage our members that we need to do, we have a lot of work to do. So good morning, honorable colleagues. I welcome you all back to the hallowed chambers of the House of Representatives. And I thank you all for being here. I thank God Almighty, by whose grace and mercy we have reconvened this morning to do the people's business in Parliament for our beloved nation. I know that the time away has been a time of consultation and engagement with constituents. I hope that we have each used the time to rest and recuperate, reflect and prepare for the tasks that lie ahead and hard work required to accomplish the ambitions we each and together hold for our country. Already in this 9th House of Representatives, we have done a lot of what we said we would do, and we have made giant strides towards keeping the promises we made to the Nigerian people in our legislative agenda. Yet, with every new accomplishment, we confront the unavoidable truth that our work is not nearly done, and the cares that concern us and animate our governing efforts have not been met. But rather than be discouraged, we draw inspiration from the things we have achieved, we learn the lessons from the times we tried and failed, and we endeavor with each new day and each new effort to do better than our previous best. In this way, through our individual and joint efforts, we will ensure that in the final judgment of history, it will be said that in the time we had, we strived and we kept the faith to the best of our abilities. In the last week before our recess, we laid the Electoral Act Amendment Bill report before the House. For 2 days, members engaged in intense and impassioned debates inspired by our varied understandings of the ideal, yet motivated by our shared desire to deliver for our country an electoral system that reflects the best aspirations of our people. This is our duty for which there is no alternative and from which we cannot deviate. Inevitably, as is always the case, the final count of votes disappointed some. This is democracy in practice, and the democratic process rarely makes for universality or universally accepted outcomes. Therefore, honorable colleagues, I urge as many as are disappointed to set aside their disappointments in the sure knowledge that as the work of Parliament never ends, what is done can be revisited until perfection is attained from repeated efforts over time. Let us remember the things we have done well and that we can and still must do well together. In this ninth assembly, we have considered and passed the Companies and Allied Matters Act, the Finance Act 2020, the Petroleum Industry Act, the Deep Offshore and Inland Basin PSC Amendment Act, amongst other such legislation focused on the economy. Each of these bills includes in their provisions critical reforms of the way we do business in Nigeria. Taken together, they represent a wholesale and long-awaited legislative intervention to improve ease of doing business, encourage investment, and drive economic growth. Let the joint effort required when we took up the course of police reform in our country and passed the Police Act 2020 inspire us to do the same with the Police Service Commission Bill, so that we can finally, using the instrument of legislative power, enact a statutory framework for holding swiftly and fairly to account those officers of the Nigerian police force who choose to abuse the authority of the state against the citizens they are commissioned to serve and to protect. Insecurity remains an overwhelming threat to all our nation's people and a hindrance that further delays the attainment of the critical development objectives necessary to put our country on the path to peaceful prosperity. Therefore, the Ninth House of Representatives will continue to take action and as required to address statutory deficiencies that limit the ability of our national security apparatus to respond effectively to the myriad of manifestations of insecurity in our country. In our last session, we convened the National Security Summit to deliberate on the issue and articulate recommendations for executive and legislative action. The leadership of the House of Representatives presented the report of that summit to His Excellency President Muhammed Buhari, GCFR, and we received assurances that the recommendations will be duly considered and implemented. We will follow through to ensure that commitment is met. At the same time, we have begun to take legislative action to implement the summit's recommendations on statutory reform, amendments, and the enactment of new legislation. Several such bills have already passed second reading and now await action in the respective committees. I urge the chairman and members of those committees to act quickly and swiftly and conscientiously to bring those bills to the floor as soon as practicable. In this parliamentary session, we will prioritize national security bills that seek to implement the varied recommendations of the summit. This is not to suggest that we will abdicate action on other matters of national concern. We only reaffirm our commitment to do all that we can to defeat those who have made it their cause to impose on our country an unending orgy of carnage and inflict our people with devastating grief. Let it be apparent to those who have made themselves enemies of Nigeria that this Ninth House of Representatives will respond to the audacity of their evil with every tool and resource at our disposal, and we will not be deterred. Thus far, we have rightly focused our national security concerns on the machinations of extremist insurgents who seek to remake our world in the image of their discredited theocracy, and bandits who maraud and terrorize whole regions for profit. We must now add to these concerns an emerging threat that presents the same clear and present danger. In the south of Nigeria, east and west, miscreants and criminals masquerading as separationist activists have emerged to wreak havoc, take lives, and commit economic sabotage against fellow Nigerians and against the state. These people, in their inclination for devastating violence against fellow citizens, their appetite for the destruction of private property, their disruption of academic activities, commerce, and industry, their propensity for defiling institutions of the state, society, and community, their refusal to engage in debate or to consider the possibility of dissenting opinions and alternative viewpoints are no different from Boko Haram and ISWAP. Given space and time, they will take our nation down the same path of destruction. We know from experience that neither appeasement nor overwhelming violence alone will work. We have been down this road before. We know what the consequences of inaction can be. We also know that we cannot afford to be reactionary in our approach. This is the time to convene our best efforts to articulate a political, economic, military, and policing strategy to address both manifestations and root causes of this emerging threat. Let nobody be under the impression that there is a political opportunity in exploiting this moment. This is a time for statesmen to act beyond the petty considerations of politics, to do the hard things and achieve greatness. During our recess, I observed some media organizations reporting on the performance of individual members of the House of Representatives, using the numbers of bills sponsored as a metric for assessing members' contributions in the past legislative year. It is not always the case that the solution to a problem lies in enacting new legislation. Often members are most effective when advocating for their constituents in the arenas of government where decisions are made. They fulfill their role in the committees when their measured contributions help to ensure that bills are of the highest quality and solve the intended problems. Legislators also honor their mandate when, through meticulous oversight of public spending and incisive questioning of public officials, they ensure that government resources are efficiently utilized to meet government objectives. Therefore, reducing the sum of a legislator's contributions to the number of bills sponsored is uninspired journalism that reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of the legislative function and the role of members in ensuring that Parliament delivers on its objectives to the Nigerian people. It is an unhealthy practice and it should not be encouraged. Across the world, the COVID-19 pandemic continues to cut a devastating path through communities. It remains an ongoing source of economic distress, social anxiety, and political upheaval. Religious and cultural hesitancy, coupled with political suspicion and an abundance of misinformation, has resulted in a global resistance to vaccination that threatens our collective ability to defeat this pandemic. Every day this crisis persists, delays our rebuilding of broken things, and inhibits our efforts to recover the things we have lost to the pandemic. Here in Nigeria, the conversation about vaccines, individual rights, the safety of communities, and the proper role of government in ensuring public health began last year with the Control of Infectious Disease Bill. Then the public debate was quickly hijacked in ways that did not make for a factual and informed examination of the critical questions of law and policy around this crucial legislation. Since then, the House Committee on Health Services has embarked on a broad-based effort at public and private engagement and collaboration to produce final legislation that hopefully meets our country's present and future needs. The committee will shortly present its report to the House, and I sincerely hope that our debate this time will be a marked improvement from what came before. As I said at the beginning of my remarks this morning, honorable colleagues, we have a lot of work to do. Much depends on how we can continue to work together in a joint effort at nation building, united by our shared ambitions of peace and prosperity for all our nation's people. I have seen what the House can accomplish when we give our full measure of devotion, and as such, I am confident of our ability to deliver on the commitments we have made to the people in whose name and on whose behalf we sit here in this hallowed chamber. I welcome you all once more to the House of Representatives, and I thank you all for being here this morning. I look forward to a productive legislative year, and I pray for the wisdom of God to guide us and His grace to shield us as we do the work of the people. May God bless you, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.